the goal to become a full-time artist. This is going to be a weekly status update, just talking about what's on my mind, what I'm thinking about, how it's going. It's not going so great at the moment. I've had a cold, flu, chest infection, stuffy kind of nose, aches, pains, tiredness, fatigue thing going on for the last 2 weeks now, which is quite difficult because I kind of came up with the conclusion that I would more seriously work towards the goal of going from part-time to full-time as an artist, probably around September time, September 2024. And at that time, I had a pretty bad cold that lasted for about 3 weeks, cold/flu. So that wasn't a great start to it. And then, what we saw 4 or 5 months on, I'm now having to deal with the same thing. And trouble is, when you feel physically ill, obviously it's a barrier, it's an obstacle, and it's quite difficult to maintain the same sort of levels of enthusiasm or motivation, especially when there are other issues on top, just other problems that sort of getting you down. Sometimes you just think, oh, what am I doing? And there's been times where I just thought, look, it's probably better for me to try and recover rather than to power through this and prolong the sort of illness. So I was just sort of laying down in bed, sort of a bit sleeping, a bit sort of resting one day recently. And I was at the same time just sort of listening to some podcasts in the background just to sort of not be bored, basically. I didn't feel up to doing much, but I thought I could just sit there and listen to something in the background. And then there was this idea that basically to be successful, you need to avoid certain pitfalls that people typically fall into. For example, video games. Playing video games, it's bad for you. It takes away from the goal in life to do real world things. You're kind of living through this simulation that has all these sort of dopamine stimulating rewards, and it's not really doing what needs to be done. And I just kind of wondered that, that's just like a given thing. And I kind of was thinking about these two people that were talking about how obviously they were both happy, successful, everything was going sort of great in their lives. And they were saying, thank God that we don't play video games as well as, other things, binge watching TV series and scrolling social media, getting too engaged in social media comments, things like that, arguments on the internet. And anyway, the thing is, the artwork I do is derived from video games, computer games, or the style of it. The whole reason that I wanted to become an artist when I was a kid was so that I could produce the kind of stuff that I liked and had value and could then share it with the world and hope that other people would get the same sort of value in what I was producing. So I went away, did some artwork for however many decades, got to a point where I was like, you know what? The stuff that I used to like as a kid, I can pretty much do that now. And I was like, great, I fulfilled the goal. But yeah, well, firstly, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's done, you've got money coming in, job success, that kind of thing. It's all good and well to have a certain degree of skills, but then being able to sort of monetize those is another issue. And over time, certainly with art and design, I'd say in the last sort of 20 years, the bar has just risen. And now with the competition of AIs and, everyone across the globe who can now just use the internet, there's such a huge pool of artists to potentially compete with that it makes the whole endeavour of making a career out of being an artist that much harder. And even though I got to a point where, there was a certain goal that I had and it took me decades to get to that point, because the goalposts have changed, the bar's risen, I now feel like, all right, well, I now need to go from, what would have been a professional back in the 1980s to being a professional in the 2020s. So, it creates a whole new challenge. But so that's one thing. Another thing I was just thinking was this idea that if it's true that just video games are sort of the root of all evil, and actually we would all be happier in our lives if they didn't exist, if instead of, staying at home, watching TV, playing games, we were out in the real world doing real productive things, then we would all be happier. life would be better. Because this is the thing, if you think about the really successful people in life, they're not people who are spending huge amounts of times in their lives gaming or really thinking about the gaming industry or, in my case, the sort of artwork side of it. And I'm not saying that I want to become a video game concept artist or, work directly in the video game industry. At the minute, most of my time is devoted to creating my card game, which is, I guess, video game adjacent, board game adjacent. So it's that same kind of thing. It's creating artwork for ultimately an entertainment product, which doesn't allow people to get anything out of it, perhaps, other than kind of a sort of sense of novelty and entertainment, kind of, sort of like a hedonistic joy from playing it. And I started to sort of really get deep into this thing and think, like, is that what I want to be contributing towards? Do I want to contribute towards an industry that arguably shouldn't exist, to create a simulation of what we should be doing and gamifying that? Is it wrong to do that? So, for example, like, it wasn't too long ago, I was looking on LinkedIn for art jobs. I thought, maybe I could try and get a bit of extra cash now that sort of, sales of my art have gone down a bit. It's like maybe I could try and boost that through doing some sort of commission contract work. I found some job vacancies that were looking for not video game artists, but people who could sort of draw, it's all video games, but draw artwork for sort of slot games, e-games, casino type games, the sort of things where, you see that, like the jackpot machines, and they have the different things like, big bass fishing, or what is it, like some, like Leprechaun's lucky gold, pot of gold, or Cleopatra's treasures or something. I don't really play jackpot machines, but I walk past them and I'm interested because it's obviously lots of artwork and colourful animations and things. And this looks quite cool. And I thought, you know what, there isn't anything here that I couldn't really do. Like, I was looking through some of the websites of some of the for some of the job vacancies, and I was seeing what the companies were about, what their portfolio was about, the games that they had created, and I thought, okay, well, I could do this. I ended up applying for a few jobs. Long story short, I didn't get anywhere. I didn't even get interviews. Some of them just got back to me and said stuff like, we can't hire you because you don't have experience working in the e-game industry or creating artwork for slots. And I kind of think it's a bit of a weird thing to say, because it wouldn't take more than a few days, a few weeks to jiggy what I know to be able to do this thing. It's like being a car mechanic, and then saying, sorry, you're a mechanic, we can't hire you because we're looking for a van mechanic. Like, an engine is an engine. It might look a little bit different, it might take a little bit of sort of familiarising yourself with the intricacies or the differences between the two, but is kind of what it is anyway. I'm not too bothered, because it was sort of one of those things where I thought, well, you know what, I'll apply, and if I then was given the opportunity to work for one of these companies, I could then decide if I wanted to or not. Like, if not, then that's fine. If yes, fine. I can still prefer this idea of kind of creating a full-time sustainable art business that I'm more in control of, rather than being, like a work for hire as a freelancer. I've kind of done the whole art commission thing, or working for a company. It's not really quite my jam. It's one of those, you do it if you can't find an alternative. And I'm not quite at the point, maybe by the end of the year, I'll be at the point where I'll be desperate. But until that time comes, I'm willing to sort of try and explore my own direction, I suppose. So yeah, e-slots is a thing. And yeah, that's a definite example of, even though my skill set would be really good for it, let's just say that I did get the job, I then have to ask myself, morally, should I be doing this? Like, is it right for me to be in some small way contributing to an industry which ultimately is out to game people? It's to get their money. all these kind of things. Ultimately, casinos, that's what it's for. It's to sort of hijack, the human propensity to, take risks and, try and seek quick rewards. It's sort of, it's a bit predatory. It's sort of preying on people's weaknesses, addiction, stuff like that. Not the I'm saying this, I don't necessarily think it's wrong to gamble from time to time if that's what you want to do. Or I don't even necessarily, until this point, I haven't really thought it's wrong to play video games. But I can see, the obvious argument for how it could be detrimental to success in certain ways if you're focusing too much of your life, too much of your time on video games. So anyway, yeah, I just ended up having a bit of a sort of weird kind of crisis of thinking, like, should I be even creating art, or the sort of art that I do? Like, was I misled when I was a kid by wanting to sort of follow the route of becoming an artist that sort of does this more sort of, sci-fi, fantasy, comic book, manga, illustration? Was that worth my time? Because it's a weird thing where these things, they can bring you joy, I guess you could say like a hedonistic pleasure, but are they making people better? Are they really helping the world? I mean, I haven't really fully thought about this too much, so I'm probably going to go away and reflect on this a little bit more. I'll come up with a conclusion shortly, but it was just something that went through my mind, and I started to sort of think, it's kind of funny as well how the aesthetic or the style that I like, like I say, based on this sort of video game artwork, comic book, manga art, I just really like that kind of artwork, but it's very much associated with just the disposable mediums of, like editorial illustration, comic books, video games, like a thing that you do, you experience it and then you cast it aside and then you get another one. And it's kind of funny how with fine art, it's perhaps less technical and less, it just has a different general look to it. It's a little bit more abstract or ambiguous, maybe. And for some reason, people associate sort of the high art, the classy looking art, with value and something that you'd actually put on your walls and keep there for years and years to come. Like, I was going to say, like, it's true that not comparatively many people would would cut out the front page of a comic book or a video game box art poster and stick that on their wall and just keep that in their family living room for years and years to come. So teenagers might, they might have rooms with full of posters and stuff. And it's just kind of a weird thing that you get to a point where you sort of think, do people think to themselves, right, I'm not a teenager now, I get to rip all these posters down and just, have a blank slate? Or it's weird that you might be a kid who is a bit geeky, you really like your video games, your anime, and you've got anime posters in your bedroom. And then when you move out and you get your own place, it seems like you just, I don't know, something happens and you're just like, no, I'm not putting this stuff up in my home anymore. It's like, are people ashamed to put it up in their homes? Or is it just because, they have to look like they're an adult? Or, if they're sharing with, they're renting with housemates or a partner, they have to kind of dial back the geeky stuff because it's not, it's a bit too niche. I don't know, it's just weird. I mean, I'm just riffing, I'm just thinking of things off the top of my head, but it is kind of weird how comic book art, for the most part, is considered quite kind of lowbrow, disposable, low end, whereas something which maybe takes less skill, and you could argue less passion, is considered better, classier, is worth more money. Like, I had this little art studio a while back, and I shared the kind of art block with several other artists. We all had our own little rooms where we would create art. I was the only person that was doing more sort of illustrative, commercial kind of art work, I guess, at the time. So I would go in, I'd sit at my graphics tablet, I'd be doing my digital art, stuff like that. Everyone else, they were more like painters, sculptors, that kind of thing. And I think for most people, it was more a sort of hobby activity. There weren't many other people doing commercial stuff. But there was this girl in the room next to me who did do commercial sort of fine art. So she had an art agent. So she was a fine artist and she would do some sculptures, she would do some paintings. She had an agent who represented her. And she would, it's the sort of, it's not the background I came from. I grew up playing video games, watching cartoons, reading comics. That's where my love of the aesthetic, the artwork aesthetics that I care about came from. For her, she wanted to explore that, that typical fine art, what do you call it, industry, that field. Anyway, so I knocked on her door one day just to say hello, asked what she was working on, just to, pass the time, a bit bored, whatever. And she said, and I saw her working on this, it was just a big sheet of paper with a big blue, she was just painting this big blue circle on it. And I asked her about it, and she said, my art agent has just asked me to come up with some bits. She's got a show for me and I need to just come up with some stuff to just sell to people. And it was it's weird because I thought, well, wait a minute. You're saying that your agent has got you clients that, people that are going to potentially want to buy your work, or you need to pad out an art show, and you now need to come up with some work for it. And your answer to that is just getting a load of sheets of paper, then drawing big blue circles on it, and then, moving on to the next one, painting another big blue circle on the next one, or whatever it was. And it was she was like, yeah. And anyway, my point is, I understand that, there's a lot of, in the sort of fine art space, it can often be more about ideas and conceptualization and trying to evoke thoughts, thought-provoking things. But in this instance, it was just an example of what, I guess the non-artistically inclined would fear, that it was just crap being produced for the sake of producing crap to sell idiots or sell to idiots. It's I just couldn't see the point of it. Maybe there was some idea behind the endeavour. Maybe it was representing, the bleakness in one's life as one transitions from girl to womanhood, or I don't know. But it was just one of these things where I thought, this is just pretentious bollocks. And you're not even pretending, certainly with me, that this is something of value. This was just producing a bit of crap, which, an art agent would go away and come up with an explanation about why this bit of crap is good, after the fact. And I just thought, isn't it weird how you're not really passionate? I could tell you weren't really passionate about this. It was just creating shit for the sake of creating some shit that needed creating. It just seemed weird that you get people that are really into, I don't know, something like dragons, fantasy artwork, and all they want to create is dragons because, they're just really, really passionate about it. It's not the sort of thing that probably most people would ever want, like I say, a family home. It's certainly not something that you'd ever see in a classy art gallery. But they might be really good at creating dragons, and they might be really passionate about dragons. And it's just kind of weird how really passionate about something and really good at something isn't getting rewarded, and how someone who doesn't really care about the thing that they're doing and is producing something they're not passionate about, that's something that isn't even objectively good, does kind of get rewarded. It was a bit of a weird thing. So Anyway, I'm just going off on tangents here, but I just wanted to sort of share a few things I've been thinking about. And I mean, at least luckily, despite the illness, I have been working on a few little pieces of artwork, which they're turning out how I want them to turn out. Quite happy with them. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But yeah, if you also have like issues or obstacles or challenges that you're dealing with, like I'd be quite interested to know what you're dealing with if you're an artist or otherwise, and what you're doing in order to get over them. Because I know what it's like sometimes where you just feel like, oh, you know what, this is too hard. I'm overwhelmed. I just want to like not deal with it, do other things. But yeah, if you ever come out of that and you sort of think, you know what, I do want to do this. You know, what is it that motivates you to finally sort of break out of the rut and to tackle those challenges? Like, be interested to know. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.